There were two spoons in the sink. I always use one. I know this sounds insane, but that's where it started for me. Not the affair. That came later. Or earlier. I'm not sure anymore. But the moment I knew, deep in my stupid, trembling gut, was when I saw two spoons in the sink at 6:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. I use one spoon. I always rinse it. I always leave it upside down on the rack. That's how my brain works. It's not OCD, it's awareness. I see things. This spoon wasn't mine. It was bigger, different curve, no smudge of almond butter like I leave. And it was wet, like it had just been used. Maeve was asleep when I left for work. Or pretending to be. Her back was turned, knees curled, wearing that sleep shirt with the faded crescent moon on the back. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, watching her breathe, watching her pretend. When I got to my desk at work, I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about the spoon. That second spoon. I even texted her. Me. Did you have a midnight snack or something? Maeve, huh? No, why? I didn't answer. I just stared at my screen and let my coffee go cold. Later that week, I checked the trash. Again, not normal behavior. I know that. But this is what happens when something's rotting and you feel it, but you can't see it yet. You go digging. There was a receipt from a gas station in South Royalton. We don't live near South Royalton. Neither does anyone she knows. There were 2 wrappers for protein bars she doesn't eat. And a napkin that smelled faintly like cologne I don't own. You ever smell something and suddenly remember a moment you weren't even present for? That's what happened. I got a mental image of her laughing in a passenger seat. Somewhere out of reach. Somewhere she made sure I couldn't follow. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started noticing patterns. Little rituals. She always showered after coming home late now. Even when she was just at book club. Her phone started sleeping under her pillow like a scared animal. She played music while she got ready for bed. Something ambient, just loud enough to hide the sound of her typing. She wasn't slipping. She was flaunting. And then last Saturday, I followed her. Yeah, I said it. I followed my own wife. In my own car. Like some tragic sitcom character who missed all the red flags until they were on fire and wrapped around his neck. She wasn't going to the gallery. She wasn't going to a team meeting. She drove across town, parked near that weird upscale tea place nobody likes, and walked 2 blocks to an apartment building I'd never seen. I waited, and waited, and just when I was about to drive off and spiral in peace, I saw her in the window. She kissed someone. It wasn't a peck. It wasn't a greeting. It was slow, intentional. His hands were on her hips like he'd known her body longer than I had. I couldn't see his face, only his silhouette. But I saw hers, smiling, alive. I went home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I cleaned the kitchen until my hands bled from the steel wool. I made a decision. If she wanted to play house with someone else, I'd let her. But I'd do it on my terms. I waited 4 days. Then this afternoon, I asked her to meet me at that same apartment building. I said I had something to confess. She looked nervous, but curious. She told me she'd come. She didn't know I already knew. She didn't know I'd be arriving early. She didn't know I'd be waiting in the hallway when the door opened and I saw her, flushed, hair messy, laughing in his arms. She didn't expect me to step inside. She didn't expect me to say a word. I didn't. I just walked up, took off my ring, and placed it in her lover's coffee cup. And then I said softly, "Now you both get to wash this off." I turned and left. I don't know what happened after, but I think that's when the real unraveling began. I haven't slept properly since. Not because of guilt or heartbreak. I'd kill to feel something as pure as heartbreak. No, I haven't slept because every time I close my eyes, I see that moment on a loop. The wet ceramic, her lipstick on the rim, my ring, still warm from my finger, sinking slightly into the black liquid like it belonged there. She didn't follow me when I walked out. That's the part that keeps replaying. No wait. No stunned silence. Not even footsteps. Just the soft click of the apartment door closing behind me after I hit the stairs. For the first time in my life, I didn't go home. I didn't even have a plan. I drove for 3 hours with the windows down and my phone off. I ended up parked at a 24-hour laundromat eating string cheese in the dark, watching a stranger fold shirts like it was a religion. When I finally turned my phone back on, I expected chaos. Missed calls, texts, anger, confusion, something. There were none. Just one message from Maeve, sent 2 hours after I left. "I guess this is who you are now." That was it. No question mark. Just a dull statement, like a diagnosis. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in my car with cheese in one hand and betrayal dripping from my lungs. I laughed like someone who'd finally realized he was never even a character in his own marriage, just a placeholder. And then something inside me broke. Or maybe it fused. I don't know. But I stopped crying. Stopped imagining what she was doing. I started watching. Not her. Him. His name is Julian. I found it faster than I expected. My dumb, poetic wife didn't even bother changing her Google review account. One search for Tamarack Apartments near Main Street, and there she was, leaving 5 stars for a building that looks like it smells like mildew. Beautiful hardwood floors and lovely natural light. Highly recommend. She signed it M. Lowell, like she's some dignified novelist. But the real gold was in the comments below. A reply from the property manager. Thank you, Ms. Lowell. We're so glad Julian made you feel welcome. Julian. So I did what any spineless, humiliated man would do at 3 a.m. after a 72-hour breakdown. I cyberstalked the ever-loving hell out of him. Julian Torres, 36, teaches a night photography class at the local community college. Drives a gray 2009 Audi A4 with a cracked taillight. Has a Pinterest board titled Soft Angles/Sharp Light. Posts moody self-portraits on Instagram with captions like, "Light doesn't lie." I hated him instantly. But not because he was her lover. No. I hated him because he was so painfully mediocre it made me question whether Maeve had ever loved me, or just needed anyone who wasn't me. Julian wasn't better. He was just available. And poetic in the exact way someone like Maeve would mistake for depth. But here's where it gets weird. The more I dug, the more I found cracks. Julian wasn't just some artsy rebound. He had a girlfriend. Or, at least, he had one. Her name was Shay. I found a tagged post of them from 3 months ago, laughing in front of a cabin in Maine. But that account, dead now. Deleted. No trace. Except one. One comment. From an untagged user. Just a sentence. He lies to everyone. Ask him about Vermont. Now my brain was on fire. What happened in Vermont? I didn't tell Maeve what I'd found. I barely spoke. I've been sleeping on the couch, claiming I caught something from the office. She didn't push it. She just shrugs and leaves earlier each day. Last night, she didn't come home at all. But I wasn't waiting this time. I drove to Julian's building at 6 a.m. and waited. He came out at 6:48, earbuds in, camera bag over his shoulder, walking like he hadn't ruined someone's marriage. I followed him. Not close enough to be noticed, but close enough to watch him stop for coffee, chat with the barista, smile like nothing was broken in the world. And when he walked into the community college building, I didn't follow. I walked around to the back. Because I'd found something the night before, a faculty directory entry for Julian. With an office number. Room 237B. The window was cracked open when I got there. I didn't climb in. I just stood on the concrete ledge, heart racing, peeking in like the coward I am. There were photos on the wall. Dozens. Of people. Mostly women. And one, taped near his desk lamp, that turned my blood to ice. It was Maeve. Not smiling. Not posing. Just staring out a window, unaware she was being watched. I recognized the scarf she was wearing. I bought it for her last Christmas. She told me she lost it in a lift 2 months ago. I'm not crazy. Something is wrong. Not just with my marriage. With Julian. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car across from the college campus, just staring at the building that held room 237B, watching silhouettes flicker behind the curtains of other rooms. I kept glancing at the printed photo I stole off Julian's office wall, the one of Maeve, her profile washed in gray light, the edges of the image curled like it had been handled too many times. That wasn't just a candid photo. It was intentional, intimate. It had the quiet violence of obsession. What kind of man keeps a photo like that taped above his desk? Not a husband. Not a boyfriend. A collector. I needed to talk to Shay. It took me 4 hours to find her. The breadcrumbs were faint. A tagged Facebook photo from an old hiking trip, a photography group's comment thread she once replied to. She hadn't posted in months. Her old account was locked down. But one link led me to a subdomain portfolio of hers still floating on the edge of the internet, likely forgotten. On the contact page, there was a single Gmail address, Shay. Rowan. Photography at. I sent the message without thinking too hard. Subject line. This is about Julian. Please read. Body, I'm Arlo. I think my wife is involved with Julian Torres. I found a photo of her on his wall. I also found your name, connected to a post that mentioned Vermont. I'm not a creep. I'm not trying to drag you into anything. But I think something is very wrong, and I think you know what I'm talking about. I didn't expect an answer. Not right away. So I waited. Cleaned the kitchen twice. Rearranged every drawer in the living room. I folded clothes that didn't even need folding. But I kept hearing that click. The click of her scarf in the photo. The click of that door closing behind me when I left the ring. Maeve didn't come home that night, either. I didn't text her. I didn't call. Let her make her choices. I wasn't trying to win her back anymore. I just wanted the truth to stand up and punch me in the face already. At 4:12 a.m., I got a reply. From Shay. It was short. Blunt. Meet me. Don't bring anyone. South parking lot of Harold Finch Library. 8:30 a.m. I'll wait 10 minutes. If you're late, don't try again. Something about the tone felt rehearsed, like she'd sent this message before, just to someone else. By 7 o'clock, I was already sitting in my car at the edge of the parking lot. I had barely eaten. My hands were cold. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd sound like someone reasonable. Someone sane. Because what if I was wrong? What if all of this, the spoons, the scarf, the photo, was just me spiraling? At 8:29, a navy blue Mazda pulled in. Driver's window down. A woman with short auburn hair, dark eyes, and the kind of face that looked like it had aged too much in 1 year. Shay. She waved me over. No smile. No introduction. The first thing she said was, "How long has he had her?" Not how long have they been seeing each other. Not are you sure it's an affair? She said had her. Like possession. I stammered something. Tried to explain, but she cut me off. He photographs them. They never see the camera. They think it's part of the charm. But it's always the same pattern. He finds them when they're vulnerable. Lonely. Looking for something poetic to believe in. They think he's depth. But he's just hollow with a camera. I asked her what happened in Vermont. She hesitated, then pulled a small folder out from her passenger seat and handed it to me through the window. Inside were 6 photos. All women. Different ages. Different expressions. All staring somewhere else. Some in windows. One sleeping. One brushing her hair in a mirror. And then the last one, frozen my lungs in place. It was Maeve. But not recent. Not from this year. She looked younger. Maybe 25. Before I met her. Wearing a necklace I didn't recognize. Smiling slightly in a mirror. Holding a shirt I knew didn't belong to her. My voice cracked when I asked, "When was this taken?" She didn't look at me. That one. That was from 7 years ago. Taken in a cabin up north. She was the girl before me. I couldn't breathe. Julian didn't just find Maeve now. He was there before me. Before our marriage. Before everything I thought was real. Which means, Maeve knew him. She had to. She didn't just meet him recently. She returned to him. And never told me. So now the question isn't whether my wife is cheating. The question is, why did she go back? And what is Julian doing to these women when the camera's not around? I drove home with Shay's folder sitting in the passenger seat like it was radioactive. My stomach was in knots. I wanted to scream at someone. Maeve. Myself. Julian. God. But the thing about this kind of betrayal, the kind that rewrites your entire timeline, is that it doesn't spark rage. Not right away. It floods you with a surreal kind of nausea. Like gravity is lying to you. Like your past is being reprogrammed in real time and your brain can't keep up. She knew him before me. She let me marry her knowing that. She wore my ring while hiding his memory. What else had she erased from her version of events? What else had I mistaken for ours that actually belonged to him? When I got home, Maeve wasn't there. Of course. Her car was gone. Her side of the bed, untouched. The little ceramic jewelry tray by the sink was empty except for 2 earrings I bought her last Christmas. She hadn't been sleeping here for days now, and I was done pretending she had. I walked straight into our closet and yanked her side open. Most of her clothes were still there. Her perfume, her scarves, shoes in neat little lines like nothing was wrong. But there were gaps, hangers without dresses, empty hooks. One of the drawers was half open. Inside were 3 envelopes, plain white. No labels. They weren't addressed to me. They were addressed to herself. Inside the first envelope was a photo. Not printed. Polaroid. Slightly faded, slightly bent. Maeve, sitting in the passenger seat of a car, laughing. The kind of real laugh you don't fake. I know, because I haven't seen her laugh like that in years. Her hand was on someone's arm. Not clearly visible, just a hint of tan skin and a camera strap slung over a shoulder. The second envelope was more alarming. It held a single page from an old notebook, torn at the spiral edge. Scribbled handwriting in Maeve's unmistakable script. Don't forget what it felt like to be watched and wanted. Don't forget that he saw you before you existed. Don't forget what you became with him, not what you settled into. It wasn't a love letter. It was a warning. Or maybe a vow. The third envelope? Empty. Which felt worse than anything. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the letter still in my hand, and realized how little I'd ever asked. How many questions I avoided for the sake of trust. How she always told stories in fragments. People from her past who didn't have names, places that didn't have maps. I thought she was being poetic. But now I saw it clearly. She was keeping a life sealed away from me like a backup drive. A parallel narrative, just in case this one ever failed. And it was failing now. I called Shay again. She answered immediately, no small talk. She went back to him, didn't she? I asked quietly. Shay exhaled. They all do. For a while. What does he do to them? I asked. Why him? What is it? Shay hesitated. I could tell she was deciding how much to give me. He doesn't make them feel loved. He makes them feel noticed. It's not the same. He studies them, memorizes their mannerisms, and mirrors them back. They think he's soul deep when he's really just reflective. A funhouse mirror. You see what you want to see, but it warps you over time. I asked, and what about the others? The ones in the photos? There was a long pause before she said, not all of them came back from Vermont. Not all of them are online anymore. You should ask Maeve what really happened at that cabin in 2017. That hit me in the spine. She knew I didn't know. I hung up. I needed answers. I couldn't wait for her to come home again at 2 a.m. smelling like wine and perfume that wasn't hers. I needed to see her face when I asked. I needed her to stumble over the lie. So I drove. Not to Julian's building. I knew she wouldn't be that obvious again. I went to the only other place she might have returned to if she wanted to feel something familiar. Something safe. Her parents' lake house. It was 2 hours away. Isolated. Private. No streetlights. No neighbors for a half-mile in either direction. And as I pulled into the gravel driveway at just past midnight, I saw a single upstairs window glowing yellow. I killed the engine and walked toward the porch, my footsteps crunching over memories. We used to sit here in Augusts, drinking gin from coffee mugs and making up stories about the shadows across the water. I thought we were in love. I knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. Then, soft creak. Curtain shift. A shadow in the window. She was watching me. I raised my hand slowly. Didn't say anything. Just held up the Polaroid. Her face disappeared from the window. And 15 seconds later, the door opened. Barefoot. Hoodie. No makeup. Her eyes glassy and unreadable. She looked at the photo. Looked at me. And then, with zero hesitation, she said, I didn't think you'd ever find that one. The house smelled like lavender and something older, something buried. The kind of scent that clings to childhood furniture and long-dead secrets. Maeve didn't say anything as she stepped aside and let me in. No apology. No attempt to pretend. She just turned and walked up the creaky staircase, barefoot, as if this was all some carefully choreographed scene she had already rehearsed. I followed her, not because I trusted her, but because I had to. Because even now, with everything unraveling around me like wet paper, some part of me needed her to say it. To confirm that I hadn't hallucinated our entire life together. To tell me that something real had ever existed between us. She led me into the upstairs bedroom. The same one we used to stay in during those lazy fall weekends. When we were still playing house and pretending that problems couldn't reach us if we closed the door. But now the room looked smaller. More claustrophobic. The windows were closed, the air stale. Her duffel bag sat half-zipped by the wall. A book was turned over on the nightstand, face down like a body. Maeve sat on the bed and didn't look at me when she spoke. Julian doesn't take women, she said quietly. They give themselves to him. That's why no one ever believes it's dangerous. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something too wide to see across. She rubbed her hands together, slow and mechanical, then continued. When I met him the first time, I thought I was special. I was 24, trying to make it as a photographer's assistant in Montpelier. He found me before I even knew I wanted to be found. That's his trick. He doesn't chase you. He lets you feel like you're the one who discovered him. I pulled the photo from my pocket again and handed it to her. So this was real? Maeve took the picture, stared at it. That was the last time I saw him before I met you. I left him. Told him I didn't want to be part of whatever weird, voyeuristic crap he was into. I thought it was over. I sat down across from her, keeping my voice as steady as I could. Then why now? Why go back to him after all this time? After building a whole life with me? She looked at me, finally, and there was something so profoundly hollow in her eyes that it made my chest ache. I was never out, Arlo. That's the part one kept lying about. You didn't rescue me from anything. I just paused. I shook my head, trying to keep up. But you married me. You said yes. You built a life with me. I know, she whispered. And I meant it. I really did. But part of me never stopped waiting for him to find me again. I told myself if he ever came back, I'd say no. That I'd be strong. That I had grown past him. But the second he showed up at that gallery opening in February, I just melted. I didn't even recognize myself. The gallery. February. That's when everything shifted. That's when the new perfume started, the late nights, the lies dressed up as stress. I leaned forward, my voice sharper now. What does he want from you? Maeve didn't answer right away. She glanced toward the window, like something was moving just outside. Then she said, he wants to photograph me again, but not like before. This time, he said, he wants to complete the series. I don't know what that means. And honestly, I'm not sure he does either. He speaks in riddles. He always has. But it's not about sex. It's not even about love. It's something else. Some obsession. Like he's documenting changes in people. Or maybe causing them. I stood up. My skin was crawling. This isn't just infidelity, Maeve. This is cult energy. This is something people don't come back from. She didn't argue. And that's when I noticed the scar. A thin line, just below her collarbone, half hidden beneath her hoodie. Faint, almost surgical. My stomach dropped. What is that? I asked, pointing. She looked down, touched it absent-mindedly. He calls them marks. Says every woman he photographs has to have one. I let him do it when I was younger. I forgot it was still there until I saw it in the mirror last week. No, no, no. This wasn't normal. This was something else. A performance? A ritual? A project? Maeve was spiraling, and I had missed every sign. Maybe willfully. Maybe because it was easier to believe she was bored than broken. I need you to leave him, I said firmly. Tonight. No more games. No more gallery meetups. No more secret apartments. We call the police if we have to. This man isn't just cheating material. He's dangerous. Maeve looked up at me again. Her expression changed. Her voice, for the first time, shook. I tried, she said. I told him I was done last night. And he smiled, she whispered. He said, that's okay. I already have your replacement. I didn't understand. What do you mean, replacement? She looked at me. And then, slowly, reluctantly, she reached behind her on the nightstand and handed me a second Polaroid. Newer. Sharper. Not faded. Same window. Same angle. But this time, it was me. Taken from outside our house. I was brushing my teeth. I dropped the photo. I didn't remember driving back. I barely remember saying anything to Maeve after she handed me that photo. My hands had started shaking and didn't stop the entire ride. It was like my brain had split in two. One part screaming that this wasn't possible. The other running through a mental checklist of every night I had felt watched. Every shadow I'd ignored outside our bedroom window. Every flicker of paranoia I had written off as stress. Julian had taken a photo of me. Inside my house. Without me knowing. That one image undid whatever illusion of control I'd been holding on to. This wasn't just about Maeve anymore. This wasn't about infidelity or deception or grief. This was intrusion. Surveillance. A line had been crossed that I didn't even know existed until I was standing on the wrong side of it. The first thing I did when I got home was rip apart our living room. I checked every vent, every book spine, every decorative vase. I looked under lamps, behind frames, above doorways. I scanned the ceilings for tiny lenses. I climbed onto counters and inspected every smoke detector like a lunatic. By the end, the floor was littered with wires, tools, dust, and pieces of my sanity. But I didn't find a single camera. I did, however, find something else. Under the couch cushions, buried between a blanket and the lining, was a memory card. MicroSD. No label. No case. Just there, loose, like it had been dropped or planted. I stared at it for a full minute before I even touched it. I wasn't ready for what might be on it. My imagination was already doing backflips through worst-case scenarios. But I had to know. So I plugged it into my laptop and waited. At first, it was empty. Just a few system folders. Nothing in the DCAM. But then I clicked through a hidden directory, and there they were. Photos. Over 100 of them. All of me. Some from inside the house. Some through windows. One from the parking lot at work. One of me sitting alone in a diner I didn't even remember visiting. All dated. All labeled by location. Whoever had taken these had been tracking me for weeks. There were notes, too. In a TXT file. Casual, cold observations, like a scientist watching an animal in a cage. Subject follows same routine. Predictable. Lonely. Rare emotional outbursts. Possibly bottling resentment. Does not confront. Observes. Internalizes. Weakness? Will break soon. Curious to document the moment. I had to stop. My heart was hammering in my chest. My palms were slick. I was being watched. Studied. Reduced to bullet points. The worst part? It wasn't even angry or hostile. It was clinical. Like I was a character in an experiment. A petri dish. I backed up the files immediately. Then I called Shay. I didn't care that it was late. She picked up on the second ring. Did you get out of the house? No, I said. I found something. I told her about the photos, the notes, the memory card. She was quiet for a long time, then said something that chilled me more than anything so far. He's accelerating. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said slowly, he's done with Maeve. That was the moment the fear turned personal. Before that, I'd felt like a bystander, a casualty of a story that had started long before me. But now I was center stage. He wasn't watching Maeve anymore. He had moved on. To me. Shay told me something else before we hung up. When I left him, he tried to replace me. The woman he found, she didn't make it through Vermont. The police never connected it. But I know. That's why I vanished. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. I just sat there in the middle of my destroyed living room, laptop open, photos of my own life staring back at me, and I realized something I hadn't let myself consider until now. Julian wasn't just some manipulative ex. He was building something, and I was now part of it. I should have left that night. I should have packed a bag and disappeared into a motel 2 towns over. But something kept me anchored. Some stubborn instinct that refused to surrender my own home to a man I had never even spoken to. So I stayed. And the next morning, when I opened the front door to check the mail, there was no package, no letter, no envelope. Just a single Polaroid lying face up on the welcome mat. It was a photo of my bedroom window, taken from inside the house. While I was sleeping, I didn't bring the photo inside. I didn't need to. I already knew it by heart. The light coming through the blinds. The edge of the pillow. My shoulder. The tilt of my neck. My mouth slightly open in sleep. It wasn't just taken from inside the house. It was taken from right next to me. I stood on the porch in my bare feet for almost 10 minutes, the morning cold creeping into my bones. There was a blackbird sitting on the power line, still as a statue. Across the street, a woman walked her dog, oblivious. The whole world kept turning, stupid and silent, while my reality frayed apart one frame at a time. I didn't call the police. I knew better by now. What would I even say? A man I've never met is taking perfectly composed photographs of me in my sleep and leaving them like breadcrumbs. No forced entry. No fingerprints. No threat. Just evidence. And I was the only one who understood what it meant. I called Shay instead. She picked up on the first ring, her voice clipped, alert. He was inside, I said. Are you sure? He took the picture from my bedside. I'd bet my life on it. There was a pause. I heard rustling, maybe a zipper, maybe keys. Okay, she said. Then we don't wait anymore. I asked what that meant. She told me she was coming over. But not to hide. Not to run. To finish this. Julian has a pattern, she said. But he also has a weakness. Which is, he thinks no one ever fights back. By the time Shay arrived that afternoon, I'd already moved every piece of furniture out of the guest room. Blank walls. Bare floor. Just a chair in the middle and a bulb overhead. I wasn't sure why I did it. It just felt right. Like a stage. Like I was inviting him in. She walked in holding a manila envelope and a burner phone. She was wearing a black hoodie, no makeup, hair pulled back so tight she looked like a different person. Hardened. Ready. She handed me the envelope. Everything you need to know is in there. His schedule. His habits. Where he's been. Where he might go next. I opened it. Inside were printouts of surveillance photos, notes on his class times, a copy of a building keycard, and, Most disturbing of all, a list of first names. 12 women. One was crossed out. 3 were marked with dates. One name had a star next to it. Mine. Maeve. I looked at Shay, throat dry. What is this? She stared at the board I'd pinned the photos to. It's his project. He called it a series, I muttered. Yeah, she said. But he's not just taking pictures. He's recording outcomes. He's trying to prove something. About possession, about how people break. He told me once that most people can't survive being truly seen. That's what he thinks he's doing. Exposing people. Reducing them to truth. I thought about Maeve. About the first time she stopped making eye contact. About the way she disappeared without ever leaving the room. She hadn't been running to Julian. She had been returning to the scene of her fracture. I knew then that I couldn't just hide. Couldn't wait for another photo. Another note. Another violation of whatever thin boundary was left between me and the void he carried around like perfume. So we made a plan. Not a violent one. No weapons. No ambush. Just an opportunity. A moment. Julian had an event coming up, a pop-up gallery hosted by one of his friends from the college. Invite only. But Shay had connections. She could get us in. We'd pose as curious collectors. Or maybe alumni. No one would ask too many questions. Art people never do. The goal wasn't to confront him publicly. It was to trap him privately. To speak to him directly. Get him to admit something. Or at least let his mask slip. I've seen it before, Shay said. He can't help himself. He always thinks he's the smartest person in the room. But if you press the right button, even Julian bleeds. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, though I was. But because I couldn't stop thinking about the last photo. Not the one left on my doorstep. Another one. Buried deep in the memory card. It showed a mirror. A large one. Cracked at the edge. One I didn't recognize. But in the reflection, standing just behind me, completely still, was someone else. Half-shadowed. Barely visible. Holding a camera. The gallery was in an old warehouse near the edge of town. All glass and concrete and minimalist pretension. The kind of space that smelled like paint thinner and expensive lies. I walked in wearing a charcoal jacket Shay loaned me. One of those deliberately bland outfits that said I belonged without inviting questions. She came in separately, 15 minutes later, playing the role of a bored art investor with a silent gaze and a drink she never sipped from. The exhibit was called Still. Black letters. No subtitle. No explanation. The walls were lined with giant matte photographs. Women caught mid-thought. Unaware, exposed. Not in a sexual way. Worse. In a private way. That sacred expression you only have when no one's watching. And somehow, he'd watched all of them. And there, in the center wall, was one of Maeve. She was standing in our kitchen, barefoot, holding a coffee mug, bathed in morning light. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She just was. It was the kind of image that would win awards. The kind that made you forget to blink. But all I could see was the invasion. The betrayal. The silence behind her eyes. He had no right. And yet here it was, sold, framed, adored. I found him 10 minutes later. Julian Torres, dressed like a man, trying not to look like he cared, leaning against a white pillar, sipping something from a crystal glass, surrounded by 3 women who all tilted toward him like plants chasing the sun. He saw me and didn't flinch. Just tilted his head slightly, smiled. Arlo, he said, like we were old friends. I was wondering when you'd show. My throat dried instantly. But I forced a breath and stepped forward. Thought I'd see the work, I said. Up close. Impressive, isn't it? He said, gesturing around the room like a magician showing off a final trick. People think I'm cruel, but I don't take anything that wasn't already slipping away. I looked him straight in the eyes. And what was Maeve slipping away from? His smile cracked, just for a second. But then he laughed softly and said, from herself. From you. From the little safe world you built. You don't get it. I don't destroy things. I reveal them. Shay was watching from across the room. I gave the signal. That's when it happened. She walked in. Maeve. Not timid. Not broken. Her posture tall, face clean, eyes sharp. She walked straight to Julian. The room quieted, tension snapping like a pulled string. He blinked. His hand twitched. Maeve, he said, suddenly less sure of himself. You shouldn't be here. She didn't stop. She stood between us and said, clearly, calmly, you don't own me. You never did. Julian laughed, nervous. Is this a performance? No, she said. This is the closing act. And then she did something none of us expected. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and tossed it at his feet. I made copies of your files, the memory cards, the names, the ones who didn't make it into your gallery, the ones you erased. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't, he said, trying to laugh again. You wouldn't risk your own name. I already did, she said. And I'm not the only one. Shay stepped forward. Others in the gallery began to turn. Whispers. A shifting energy. You lose, Julian, I said quietly. And this time, the lens is pointed at you. The fallout happened fast. Shay leaked the files through a journalist friend that night. The story hit local news first, then national within days. Anonymous women came forward. Exhibits were pulled. Investigations launched. Julian's name vanished from the school's faculty page within a week. No arrests, not yet. He'd always been careful, but enough pressure built to collapse everything he'd built on stolen intimacy. And Maeve? She didn't run. We didn't divorce. Not right away. There were long talks. Ugly ones. Quiet ones. The kind you have when two people try to decide whether there's anything left to salvage. We went to therapy. Together. Separately. We picked up our pieces one by one, and we chose, not to forget, but to rebuild. On truth. On ruin. On a kind of love that knows what it almost lost. One morning, weeks later, I found her in the kitchen holding a mug of coffee. Same spot from the photo. Same light. She looked up at me and smiled, tired but real. You still have that ring? She asked. I nodded, pulled it from the drawer. She held it for a moment, then handed it back. Hold it for me, she said. Just until I'm sure I can earn it again. I slipped it back into the drawer. And we kept going. Together.